This is kind of my ranking, and yeah. Alright, so in this video we're going to have a quick look at Zhongli's spears and compare them. I used a new method, kind of optimizing everything using my Python program, so it's going to be interesting to see that. So we consider the elemental burst, and then we use the same damage formula as we've always been using on this channel, and we're considering it on Zhongli. So here's sort of the chart. So this is used for the second method. Basically, in the first method, we assume optimized substats. So basically, the maximum you can get if you roll 20 substats correctly. And then for the second method, we're only assuming guaranteed stats. So that's basically artifact main stats. And for the first method, we only looked at one artifact main stat combination. So the purpose of this test, in the first comparison, we're comparing all of the spears based off of their optimized stats with 20 rolls. We're considering HP percent scaling. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. In the second comparison, all of the spears are compared based off of guaranteed stats with the different artifact combinations so that you can see how they sort of scale and how they change with different artifact combinations. And there we ignore HP percent scaling and some other things. So in the first comparison, here's a table with basically the attack percent, base attack, crit rate, and crit damage, and elemental bonus stats that I was including. So most of these weapons, the 4 stars are at R5, the 5 stars are at R1, just so that we can compare them decently. And these are the stats that I'm using. So I might have made a mistake here, but if you see something, just comment down below and I'll pin it and try to make it clear. If there's too many mistakes, then I'll take down the video, but should be pretty decent. So the assumptions that we're making is that we're including elemental resistance decrease from his shield effect. So this is his new ability. This doesn't really matter because it's going to affect each of them the same, so it's not going to change the trends. And we're going to include the 33 HP damage bonus. Now I wasn't sure if this goes exactly on the inside as attack. So if he gets basically a 33% of his HP as an attack bonus, or if this just goes on the outside. So I put it on the outside, but again, this shouldn't change the trend because it's being applied to every single spear. Then we're considering his elemental burst at level 6, which has the given multiplier on the screen. So for the optimization data, this is basically the output that I got. You can pause this and have a closer look. At the bottom, we've got in the second box, that's basically the distribution of the rolls for the substats, so that's super useful, assuming everything's correct. And yeah, I made some graphs, so we can look at those. For the maximized optimization graph, here we're assuming that the artifacts are crit rate, elemental bonus, and attack percent. And we can see some pretty interesting stuff. So this is assuming all of the guaranteed stats. My program effectively maximized the damage by fiddling around with the substat roll values, which I talked about in my last video. And I'll put a link for that into the description below if this is kind of your first time and you want to have a closer look at that. But basically, the most important thing that we can see here is that the weapons that have the most effectively crit rate, crit damage, or attack percent and don't need to compensate for it in any way will do the best. So the Lithic, actually its passive gives it an attack percent and a crit rate stats, and because we're assuming it's at R5, then it's getting about 28% crit rate, so that's putting it like way ahead of everything else. Its main substat is also attack percent, so it's very, very good. The Homa has a really good base attack, then it's got HP scaling that works very well on Zhongli, and then it's got the HP attack percent scaling, so he gains attack based off of his max HP. And then it's got a really big 66% crit damage substat, so that's just really helping the Homa, and it's able to basically compensate for damage in a lot of other ways. Blackcliff Polearm has got its crazy crit damage and then a lot of attack percent, assuming it's R5, so that would put it up. Now, if Lithic and Blackcliff are at 0 stacks, that would put them somewhere lower to where like Royal is. So it would put them under basically everything else. So you need to remember those are situational. I hope they nerf Lithic, because the potential for it seems like way too much, but we'll see. Otherwise, the Jade and the Vortex Vanquisher are doing very good. They're basically neck to neck. With the Vortex Vanquisher, you do have to make sure you've got your shields up and all of that stuff. The deathmatch is very solid. It's got a lot of that attack percent and crit rate just from its stats, so you're just going to need mostly crit damage. Then Royal's next. Spine is very low because we're not considering the attack as damage in here, so it would definitely be above Royal and arguably somewhere near deathmatch. And then depending on how much you value the energy recharge, that's where you can kind of weigh or put it higher or lower than some of the other spears. And then otherwise, all of the other ones are kind of lower down in terms of damage. Some are energy recharge, and they all have their little caveats. So this is the stat distribution for the optimized spears. So basically what we can see here in each of the colors in green, that's the number of attack percent rolls that you want to aim for. Red is the number of crit rate rolls, and then black is the number of crit damage rolls. So how to read this graph basically is if you've got the Blackcliff, then you're going to want over like around 12 crit rate rolls, and then something like 7 or 8 crit damage rolls, assuming you can get 20 favorable ones. And then basically you don't need any attack percent, assuming that you're maxing out your stacks. And you can read all of the other ones like that also. So this is a super useful chart in my opinion, assuming the math is correct. But it should make somewhat of sense. So because basically like Homa is missing a lot of, or it has a lot of crit damage, and so that's why it wants a lot of crit rate. Same with Blackcliff. So now we're going to look at the second comparison. So some of the assumptions we made quickly for this comparison is that we're not including the elemental resistance decrease by minus 20% from his kind of new buff, and we're not including the HP percent attack scaling. And there's no substats, so we're just considering main substats and different combinations to kind of see naturally how all of these spears are going to do in comparison to each other. So here we can see the different combinations of crit damage, crit rate, and then attack as one of them, and the other two main artifact slots being elemental bonus and attack. And here you can see which one naturally favors which kind of combination. So some of these do really like the attack, elemental bonus, and attack. So in the optimized state, we were only looking at the gray values effectively, but because we were able to kind of compensate for everything with the substats by optimizing it, it should be, I would go more by the first test case scenario. This is more just if you can't get your substats, you don't have very good artifacts, then out of the box, this is about how much damage each spear will do, roughly speaking. And this is how they stack up with each other. And basically here we can see that the spine is doing a little bit better. The 5 stars are pretty high up. And then the deathmatch is up here too, and the Lithic and the Blackcliff with stacks are very high. The Lithic with Blackcliff without stacks, or 0 stacks, basically Lithic will have 1 because Zhongli still has 1. He'll always have 1 stack because he's from Leeway. So they're lower down here, so they're still very good options. There's not too much of a change between Xiao kind of comparisons, but what I would say is a big thing is that energy recharge might not be as important unless you do really want to have a good Zhongli ult spam. So you just want to spam his ult, then energy recharge is something you might want to go look for. Here's the numbers for the non-crits. You can look at these in more detail. Here's the numbers for the critical values and what kind of crit rate, crit damage, elemental bonus. Here I highlighted the maximums. Again, these are the average, weighted average damages for each of the spears basically. Then here I put them together and then I highlighted the deficiencies. So if you compare these to the first test case, you're actually going to see that the ratios are all basically, I want to say basically perfect, because the optimization does account for that and does maximize the amount of damage that you can get for each of the cases. Here there are deficiencies because we're just kind of slapping it together and we're not really considering, we're not able to fine tune it into the correct ratios. So a lot of these combinations, if we actually go back, they're relying just on attack, elemental bonus attack, just because it's not able to get a good crit rate and crit damage ratio. So it doesn't even bother to go for some of these other, like this one or this one. So a lot of them just like to jump into attack. The last thing I'd like to talk about is what else we're like kind of missing and what's not shown in this kind of damage graph. So of course I still haven't figured out the attacker's damage bonus calculation, so I will get onto that at some point, but in the near future I got my midterms coming, so I might ignore these for a little while. For something like the crescent pike, this spear would be really good if you're trying to do your normal attacks again. Zhongli doesn't really infuse his normal attacks, so the physical damage bonus is good. So the crescent pike is much better. Again, skyward spine, it's like a little tornado thing or whatever. We're not counting that, and same with the icicles from the dragon spine spear. So those not counting those would make all of these a bit better. And then here we're missing physical damage bonuses for these. So these would be really good if you really want to use Zhongli as a main DPS and you just want to do a lot of normal attacks also, not just the burst spam. Alright, so now I'm just going to quickly throw everything and kind of compile all of our thoughts in a tier list. This is going to be mostly based off the optimized kind of damage, so that's what I'm going to be basing it off of. So Lithic, super broken stats, it's going to be S tier. Homa is going to be S tier. It has everything. As we could see, it literally was the highest, it gave the highest optimized value. Blackcliff is going to be S tier. It has very good attack percent, crit damage stats. Pike is going to be, I'm going to put it in A tier. You can probably put it into S tier if you're focusing on a Zhongli where you really want to hit, because the normal hits with the Crescent Pike are going to add up so much attack as damage. It's going to be like crazy. So Pike is honestly really good, but for the burst, you know, for the meteorite, it's not going to do the biggest number. Deathmatch is going to be somewhere in S tier among these guys. Doesn't have the high potential as these do, but it is very consistent, and it is definitely up there, very close behind the 5 stars. Dragon's Bane is like C. If he was Pyro and could utilize the effect, maybe, but the base attack's not good. And yeah, Dragon's Spine is also going to be C. Could be a bit better. The attack as damage effect is like not the best in the world, so it's alright, but it's not the best. Favonius is actually does a little bit more damage than both of these, has a higher base attack basically, and it does give that energy recharge, which makes it really good. If you want to make a burst spam Zhongli, you can put this higher up, but it's pretty good, I think, right there. Jade is triple S. It's got all, you know, the attack, the crit damage, crit rate. It's literally got everything. Very solid, well-rounded spear. Prototype Star Glitter, I'm going to put, I think, A. Yeah, A, kind of behind Crescent Pike. I would definitely use it afterwards, unless, again, you do really want to get that burst spam going with its energy recharge. It is good for that. Royal is going to do more damage than basically a Crescent Pike, but arguably if you're doing... So this would be on a burst, but if you're just thinking about normal attacking, I would have this order. So best is on the left and it goes worse is on the right. Alright, Skyward Spine. It's okay for the burst. I would put it at the end of the S tier. It's like, honestly, it does much less damage than basically all of these. On the burst, it's not going to give you that really big number, but it does give you all of that energy recharge, it does give you a lot of other good things. You need a really good stat, like artifact stats, to utilize this. This one would be sketchy. It's a lot better on Xiao in my opinion, because he is someone who needs the energy recharge. Again, if you're building a burst spam, then this could actually be like even potentially up there, or at least higher up in the S tier. It's good, but it's for like big number damage in one shot. It's not the best in the world. And Vortex Vanquisher is going to be up here. We've got it neck and neck in the average optimized damage with Jade Spear, so it's going to be somewhere up here. You have to make sure you're wearing your shields, so it's a little bit, I think, less easy to use than the Jade, because you don't need to worry about anything with the Jade. Home is awesome. He's got lots of HP. Naturally, he's going to get to about 20k, and then he's going to get that, I was counting as a 1.8% bonus, but it might be 0.8. Still, it's going to be very big. It's very useful. This is kind of my ranking, and yeah. If you like the video, please like and subscribe for more Genshin Impact math analysis. I forgot to change this, but in the next video, we're probably going to be looking at Keqing, comparing all of Keqing's spears, and I might drop a few other little videos in between that. But yeah, see you in the next one. Have a nice day.